because precisely that's why there's a need for this framework. The Climate Change Commission will be a body where more technical debate will be conducted, and one of the outputs would be legislation, maybe strengthening existing legislations on the environment, such as clean air, for example, and carbon emissions, and the protection of our forests. In my first term, I tried to author, I was the author, and I tried to have this enacted, the total log ban, but I met with very stiff resistance, and it was indeed a tough fight. It's almost an impossible endeavor, but I had to make some adjustments. And I think one of the things that will come out of this Climate Change Commission would be laws on protecting the environment, protecting our forests.
Yes, sir. Kindly introduce yourself and your company.
Good morning. My name is Marlon Era from De La Salle University in Manila. This question goes to our both speakers. I'm pleased to know that there will now be a venue for debate on global warming, because I'm also following discussions that it's not global warming, but some are saying it's global cooling. As a matter of fact, there were some realizations from those who provided earlier information about the effect of climate change, that they are agreeing that it's not anymore carbon dioxide that contributed, but other reasons like methane. My question is actually, some people are saying that there's a need to do more research in terms of gathering information to come up with empirical evidence of really having climate change. And Al Gore was saying that in the US, Americans are not convinced that there is such climate change. And he admitted that in order to influence the way of life, it's more on the spiritual aspect. That's why some people are claiming that climate change is a religion. What is your take on this? Thank you.
Briefly put, I think that what has been troublesome, especially in the past few weeks, is so-called Pew Research results in the United States, which indicate that the awareness of climate change has not been increasing, it has been declining. Couple that with the impact of the crisis, particularly in the United States, the economic impact. Take into account the fact that troubles me personally the most, that for the past 3 or 4 years, for the first time since the post-war era, there is an increasing opposition in America, or skepticism on free trade. You have a convergence of trends that separately might not be so influential, but now are. And the reason is this: the economic crisis that I talked about, setting the context for my own presentation. What has happened was that we were able to contain the depression impact. What is not known so well is that the collapse of trade, looked from the point of view of volume of the World Trade Index, is worse than what it was in the early 1930s. Without the rejuvenation, revival of exports and so forth, it's very hard to see how we manage in the very long term. Now that takes you back to the question one. If instead of increasing awareness, you have declining awareness, and the effort, which is understandable by itself, to see this crisis, economic crisis, as a pretext of ignoring these changes, we may be entering in a very difficult policy positions prior to the Copenhagen, which might explain why there's a lot of anxiety about Copenhagen.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to also mention that in the case of Copenhagen, there's a lot of doubt on whether Copenhagen will be able to come out with an agreement. I understand that a few weeks ago they were trying to hammer a draft agreement in London, but there were some difficulties, precisely because of the vested interests of each player. In a developed country, people are worried about changes in their lifestyle, even changes in their production capability. In a rising economy like India, China, they're worried that this might slow down their momentum. In the case of countries like the Philippines, for example, people are saying that why are we going to contribute? They're the ones who brought about all these carbon emissions, all these greenhouse gases were brought about by the developed economies. Most of the logs that were lost, the trees that were cut down in the Philippines, ended up in developed countries, especially when logging was such an intensive activities in the 50s and the 60s. Remember, for those who are not so young anymore, remember that during those days when we were studying economics, we would always say that the principal products of the Philippines were forest products, mining products, etc., etc. And all of the abuses of the past now contribute to our problems in the environment. With respect to global warming also, I'm surprised about the skepticism in the United States. I'm surprised about the lack of awareness in the United States, especially considering that the former Vice President won a Nobel Prize for his advocacy on climate change. That should have garnered a lot of publicity and awareness. But of course, maybe there are some technical discussions here. If we are talking of global warming, NASA conducted a study and they found out that the warmest year in recent history was 1998, and the second warmest year is 2005. So people would say, what global warming are we talking about? If indeed there will be global warming, then 2007 would be warmer than 1998, and 2009 will be warmer than 2007. But this seems to be the other way around as far as NASA is concerned. Global warming, climate change is also affected by volcanic activity. One of the most major volcanic activities of recent years was the eruption of Mount Pinatubo